The year was 2278, a time when the solar system was no longer the quiet, empty place humanity once imagined. By then, Earth had colonies on Mars, mining stations in the asteroid belt, and research outposts orbiting the frozen moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Humanity had grown bold, confident, too confident. The Earth Defense Command, the most powerful military force in human history, had just announced something the news channels called the Jewel of the Solar Navy. A fleet so large, so advanced, that no enemy could possibly threaten humanity again. They called it the Ultimate Fleet, 30 massive battle cruisers, hundreds of smaller warships, billions of credits in weapons, shields, and engines, all designed to protect Earth and its colonies for the next century. People cheered in the streets. Children watched recruitment ads with wide eyes. And somewhere inside one of Earth's largest space academies, a young officer named Ethan Cole was quietly wondering if anyone would notice if he didn't show up for graduation. Ethan had always been the strange one. Not the worst cadet, not the best, just different. While others bragged about how fast they could run simulations, or how perfectly they could aim a railgun, Ethan spent hours in the Academy's old communications lab. He liked reading old data files, exploring forgotten deep space scans, and studying signal patterns no one else cared about. The other cadets didn't understand him. To them, he wasn't a serious soldier. He was the slow one, the one who never made the right call in war games. When the instructors asked for aggressive attack plans, Ethan gave careful, defensive ones. When others fired their ship weapons in perfect formation, Ethan was always scanning the surroundings, looking for something. It wasn't that Ethan was lazy. He simply thought differently, and in a place where thinking differently meant you couldn't follow orders perfectly, that was dangerous. Cole, one of his instructors, had once said, "You have a good brain, but you're wasting it. You hesitate. You look for problems that aren't there. In battle, hesitation gets people killed." The other cadets had shorter, cooler names for him: deadweight, background filler, or simply useless. The graduation ceremony should have been a proud day. Hundreds of cadets stood in neat rows in the Academy's Great Hall, wearing crisp black uniforms with silver trim. Family and friends filled the upper balconies, cheering as each name was called. When Ethan's turn came, he walked up to the platform, saluted, and accepted his posting orders. No applause, no cheers, just polite silence. His assignment? Not to one of the brand new ships in the Ultimate Fleet, but to a small patrol cutter, barely large enough for a crew of 12. It wasn't glamorous work. Mostly scanning shipping lanes for smugglers, mapping asteroid drift patterns, and responding to distress calls from mining stations. A job no one else wanted. It was a polite way of saying, "We don't think you'll ever matter in a real fight." Ethan didn't complain. He took his orders, boarded his assigned ship, the ECS Vigilant, and began his quiet, unimportant career. For months, he patrolled the edges of human space, far from the glory and excitement of the Ultimate Fleet. He didn't mind the work was simple, the crew was small, and the stars were endless. But late one night, while running a standard long-range scan, Ethan noticed something unusual: a faint, rhythmic pulse, so weak it barely registered on the ship's sensors. It wasn't a normal beacon signal, and it wasn't coming from any known human installation. In fact, it was coming from deep beyond the farthest mining stations. Way out, past the Kuiper belt, into the dark, Ethan recorded the signal and ran it through the communications array. It repeated every 87 minutes exactly, like clockwork. No variations, no static. Just a clean, cold pulse. It didn't sound like a distress call. It didn't match any Earth frequencies. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. Over the next week, Ethan kept checking the signal whenever he could. It was always there. Same pattern, same interval, same faint strength. He told the Vigilance captain about it, But the man just shrugged. Cole, we're a patrol ship, not a deep space research team. If it's not pirates or smugglers, it's not our problem. Forget about it. So Ethan didn't mention it again. But he didn't forget. When the Vigilant stopped at a supply station near Neptune, Ethan spent his off-duty hours in the station's old astrolab, running the signal through every decoding program he could find. Most came back empty. One produced something odd. A string of numbers and symbols. The numbers were star coordinates. The symbols he didn't recognize. But together, they formed a repeating phrase in the data. 7 cycles REM. 7 cycles of what? Ethan didn't know. He wasn't even sure the translation was correct. But he knew one thing. This was no random background noise. Someone or something had sent this. 3 days later, the Vigilant was recalled to Earth orbit for routine fleet updates. The capital shipyards were alive with activity. The Ultimate Fleet's final battleships were being prepared for their first deployment. The news feeds were full of smiling admirals and confident speeches. Standing on the observation deck of the Vigilant, Ethan watched the giant warships glide past. They looked invincible, massive armored hulls, bristling with weapons, glowing with shield energy. Every officer in the system wanted to be part of that fleet. Ethan's own ship looked like a lifeboat. Compared to them, small, forgettable. That night, during a simulation drill for the assembled fleet, Ethan was assigned to run a sensor sweep for hidden threats. Most cadets rushed through the exercise, eager to return to the battle part of the drill. Ethan, as always, took his time, and that's when he saw it again. The pulse. Buried deep in the simulation's sensor feed. Faint, almost invisible dot. It wasn't part of the simulation. It was real. Ethan froze, staring at the numbers as they appeared. The pulse interval had changed. It was no longer 87 minutes. Now it was 73. The countdown was speeding up. After the drill, Ethan went straight to the nearest communications officer. He explained the signal, the coordinates, the change in timing. The officer listened politely, then laughed. "You've been out on patrol too long, Cole. You're seeing patterns in static. That's what happens when you stare at the void for months. Go get some rest." Ethan didn't rest. He returned to the Vigilant, pulled the signal files from the ship's database, and sat alone in the comms room, running them through every filter he could. The translation was clearer now. The phrase appeared again. First strike begins in 7. DAYS 7 days. 7 days until, what? Ethan tried to report it to Fleet Command directly. But as a low-ranking officer, his access was limited. He couldn't get through to anyone important. And so, on the first day of the Ultimate Fleet's grand deployment, while crowds on Earth cheered and the news called it the dawn of humanity's greatest age, Ethan Cole stood at his small ship's console, staring at the cold, pulsing numbers on his screen. He didn't know what was coming. He didn't know who had sent the signal. But he knew this. The message wasn't a warning for someone else. It was for humanity. And no one, not the admirals, not the politicians, not even the Ultimate Fleet was listening. Somewhere in the black, far beyond the reach of Earth's defenses, something was coming. And it was coming soon. That's how Ethan's story began. Not with glory, not with a heroic speech, but with a signal no one believed in. A signal that, in just a week's time, would make the difference between survival and extinction. And the man everyone called useless was about to become the only one who could save them. The Vigilant's engines hummed quietly in the dark. Outside the small patrol ship's hull, there was nothing but stars, cold, distant, and silent. To most crew members, it was peaceful. To Ethan Cole, it was a ticking clock. The alien signal had not stopped. If anything, it had grown stronger, faint before, now sharp enough that even the Vigilance standard sensors could pick it up without advanced filters. The interval had changed again. Now it pulsed every 61 minutes. Ethan sat alone. In the comms room, the glow of the console painting his face in blue light. He watched the signal appear again on the screen, the same repeating coordinates, the same strange symbols. The translation program ran automatically now, spitting out the phrase that haunted him. First strike begins in 7 days except now. It said 5 days. Ethan's first instinct was to go to the captain again. Captain Hayes was a strict but fair man, a veteran of several fleet engagements against pirates and rogue colonies. But Hayes had little patience for ghost stories in deep space. When Ethan entered his quarters with the latest signal report, Hayes sighed. "Cole, I've told you before, we are not a research vessel. Fleet Command hasn't issued any warnings, and there's nothing on the official threat lists. You're making yourself look paranoid," Ethan pressed on. "This isn't static. The interval keeps changing. It's counting down to something." Hayes frowned. "Even if that's true, what do you want me to do? Turn this ship around and go chasing shadows in the outer system? We'd lose our patrol assignment, and Fleet would put us on disciplinary review. You think they'll believe a junior officer over the most advanced intelligence network in history?" Ethan didn't answer. He knew Hayes was right, about Fleet Command at least. They wouldn't listen. Not yet. That night, while the Vigilant drifted along its patrol route, Ethan couldn't sleep. The message repeated in his mind, over and over. He pulled up old navigation maps and plotted the coordinates again. They pointed to a patch of empty space far beyond the Kuiper Belt, an area where no human ship had ever reported anything unusual, or almost no ship. Digging through archived long-range exploration logs, Ethan found something odd, a record from a probe launched decades ago. Its mission was to map gravitational anomalies in deep space. Near the same coordinates, it had detected a massive object moving at sublight speed. Then, halfway through its return journey, the probe went silent. Fleet Command had written it off as a technical failure. But now Ethan wasn't so sure. 2 days later, the Vigilant docked at Port Helios, a supply and communications hub orbiting Neptune. It was a place where officers traded stories, refueled ships, and sent messages home. It was also a place where Ethan hoped he could find someone willing to take him seriously. He made his way to the station's public communications archive, a dusty old room filled with unused consoles. Here, with no one looking over his shoulder, he connected to the civilian Deep Space Listening Network, a loose collection of amateur astronomers and hobbyists who scanned the stars for fun. It took him hours, but eventually he found confirmation. 2 independent stations, one on Mars, one on Ceres, had detected the same signal. Neither had been able to decode it, but both noted the unusual consistency in its timing. One operator, an older man named Rivas, sent Ethan a private message. "I've been tracking this thing for weeks. It's moving slowly but toward the inner system. I tried warning the Mars Defense Network. They told me to stop wasting their time. Whatever it is, kid, it's not natural, and it's not friendly." Ethan saved the data and returned to the Vigilant just as the crew was preparing to depart. The captain glanced at him. "Get what you needed, Cole." Ethan hesitated. "Yes, sir," he said, keeping his voice neutral. Back in his quarters, he compared the amateur data with the fleet's official star charts. The object's trajectory was clear. In less than a week, it would cross into Neptune's orbital path. And if it maintained its course, it would be inside the orbit of Saturn in less than 10 days. Ethan knew what that meant. Whatever this was, it wasn't just moving randomly through space. It was heading straight toward the heart of the solar system. The next day, the Vigilant received a system-wide broadcast from Fleet Command. The Ultimate Fleet had been officially deployed. 20 of the newest battlecruisers were now stationed along the outer rim, ensuring peace and stability in the farthest reaches of human space. The news anchors spoke with pride. describing the fleet as an unstoppable wall of steel between Earth and any possible threat. Ethan felt a cold weight in his stomach. He knew that wall was in the wrong place. If the coordinates were correct, the approaching object would bypass most of the fleet entirely. He tried again to warn Captain Hayes, this time showing him the combined civilian and fleet data. The captain's expression softened, but only slightly. "Cole, even if I believed you, do you know what happens to captains who break formation without orders? I'd be stripped of command. You'd be court-martialed. And if you're wrong, if this turns out to be nothing, you'd be finished in the Navy. Are you ready to bet your career on this?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He thought about the mocking laughter from his academy days, the word useless thrown at him. Over and over. Maybe it didn't matter if they ended his career. If he was right, there wouldn't be a Navy left to serve anyway. "Yes, sir," he said finally. "I'm ready." Hayes stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. "Not yet, Cole. Not until we know for sure." That night, Ethan was on comms duty when the signal suddenly spiked in strength. The console flashed warnings. The source was closer now, much closer. Running a quick calculation, Ethan's hands went cold. It was no longer 5 days away. It was 3, and it wasn't just one object anymore. There were 20. He immediately pulled up the Vigilance long-range imaging system. At first, the black of space looked empty. Then he saw them, faint shapes against the stars, like shadows gliding silently forward. They weren't broadcasting any identification beacons. They weren't emitting normal engine signatures. They were silent hunters. Ethan sent the data to the captain without hesitation. Within minutes, Hayes was on the bridge, staring at the readings. "Could be a fleet exercise," one of the crew suggested. Hayes shook his head. "No, those are not human ships." The silence on the bridge was heavy. Everyone knew what that meant. Finally, Hayes turned to Ethan. "Cole, get this data to Fleet Command, now." Ethan tried, but every secure channel was jammed. Static roared over the comms, blocking outgoing transmissions. Whoever these ships belonged to, they were using powerful electronic countermeasures. "We're cut off," Ethan said. "They don't want anyone to know they're here." For the next hour, the Vigilance shadowed the unknown fleet at a safe distance. The alien ships moved with unsettling precision, never drifting, never slowing. Each one was massive shaped, like a long dark spear with no visible lights. They looked nothing like the blocky, angular designs of human warships. Ethan felt a strange pressure in his chest as he watched them. It wasn't fear exactly, more like the crushing awareness that humanity had no idea what it was up against. Then, without warning, one of the alien ships changed course. It turned directly toward a small mining station orbiting the dwarf planet Haumea. The Vigilance crew watched in horror as the alien ship fired a single pulse of light, silent, colorless, almost gentle. A second later, the station exploded. Into dust, no debris, no survivors. The bridge was silent except for the steady beep of Ethan's console. The countdown had changed again. Now it said, "First strike begins in 7 days except." The number beside it was 2. Hayes made his decision. "We're breaking patrol, heading for the main fleet at Neptune." Ethan almost smiled with relief. Finally, they would warn someone who could act. But the alien ships had other plans. 2. Broke formation and began following the Vigilant. They didn't accelerate suddenly. They didn't fire. They simply matched the patrol ship's course, closing the distance with slow, deliberate certainty. On the bridge, the crew worked frantically to boost the engines. Ethan kept his eyes on the sensor readouts. The alien ships were faster. By the time Neptune came into view, only one of the alien ships was still following. The other had vanished, slipping away into the dark. Ethan didn't like that. Ships didn't just disappear. When they finally reached the edge of Neptune's defense perimeter, Fleet Command ships moved to intercept. their captains demanding to know why the Vigilant had broken orders. Hayes wasted no time. He sent the alien data to the nearest battlecruiser, then to every ship in the sector. Within minutes, the secure channels lit up with urgent chatter. Commanders who had laughed at ghost stories were now staring at undeniable proof, but it was already too late to stop the first engagement. The alien ship that had been following the Vigilant accelerated suddenly, closing the gap between it and the nearest human battlecruiser. The cruiser fired first, unleashing a barrage of railgun slugs and missile salvos. The alien ship didn't even dodge. The projectiles vanished against an invisible shield. Then the alien vessel returned fire, a single beam of pale energy that sliced through the battlecruiser's armor like it was paper. The explosion lit up the space around Neptune, casting long shadows across the Vigilant's hull. Ethan watched in stunned silence as the alien ship turned again, this time toward the rest of the Ultimate Fleet. Somewhere deep in his chest, he knew this was only the beginning. The countdown was still ticking, and no matter how strong humanity thought it was, the real war was about to start. The battle began just after dawn in Earth's orbit, but no one on the huge command ship saw it coming clearly. The Ultimate Fleet was massive. 30 battlecruisers, dozens of destroyers, and hundreds of smaller ships formed a ring around Earth, ready to defend the home planet and its colonies. The pride of humanity. But as the enemy ships appeared, cutting through the dark like sharp knives, the fleet's confidence began to crumble. Ethan Cole was on the bridge of the Ika's Vigilant, the small patrol cutter he'd been assigned to since graduation. The small ship had been pulled in from the outer edge of the system to help with early warning and communication. No one thought much of the Vigilant. It was slow, lightly armed, and outmatched in every way by the giant warships that made up the fleet. Yet Ethan's eyes were sharp and alert. Contact! The warning klaxon screamed across the Vigilant. Ethan jumped to the sensor console and studied the screen. 20 alien warships were advancing fast toward Earth. They weren't like any human design. Long, sleek, black shapes with no visible windows or lights. Their shields shimmered faintly in space. "Commander," Ethan said quietly, "they're moving in formation. We're outnumbered and outgunned." Captain Hayes paced behind him, his face grim. "I know, we're going to have to buy time until reinforcements arrive." But reinforcements were already here. The Ultimate Fleet was spread thin, expecting to stop any attack long before it reached Earth's orbit. The aliens didn't waste time. Without warning, they opened fire. The first shots were strange thin beams of pale light that cut through space silently. They bypassed shields with ease, striking the largest battlecruiser, the ECS Titan, at full power. The explosion was terrible, a fireball that swallowed the Titan and sent shockwaves through the fleet. On the Vigilance bridge, Ethan watched as the Titan vanished from the sensor screen. "Status report." Captain Hayes barked. "We've lost the Titan," the weapons officer said. "Hull breach, reactor meltdown." The fleet commanders struggled to organize a defense, but the alien ships were fast and coordinated. The next hour was chaos. Battlecruisers fired their biggest weapons, but nothing could stop the alien advance. The enemy moved like predators, attacking from unexpected angles, disabling communications and navigation systems on human ships. One by one, the giant warships fell. Ethan's Vigilant dodged missiles and energy blasts, using its small size to slip through gaps and debris. "Keep moving," Ethan ordered the helm officer. "We need to stay alive." The crew worked in tense silence, aware that the Ultimate Fleet was collapsing around them. The command ship Ika's Dominion, flagship of the fleet's admiral, was the next target. It was a massive warship with powerful shields and weapons, but the aliens focused their fire on it relentlessly. On the Dominion's bridge, Admiral Keller shouted orders as systems failed one by one. "Divert power to forward shields. Launch fighters. Prepare to ram if necessary." But it was too late. A beam of pure energy sliced through the Dominion's hull, causing a massive explosion. The ship broke apart, and the Admiral's voice was lost in the chaos. Back on the Vigilant. Ethan stared at the sensor screen in shock. The fleet's leadership was gone. Communication was broken. The ultimate fleet was scattered and broken, and Ethan was now the highest-ranking officer in the entire system. He felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. "We have to regroup," Ethan said, voice steady despite the fear inside. "Send out a distress signal. Gather all surviving ships." Captain Hayes nodded slowly. The Vigilance communications officer worked quickly to broadcast an emergency message across all channels, but static answered. The aliens had jammed all outgoing communications. Human ships were isolated, fighting alone. Ethan's mind raced. He remembered the alien signal, the one he had tried so hard to warn others about. It was no coincidence. This was the first strike. Suddenly, a warning flashed on the Vigilance screen. An alien ship was targeting them. Evasive maneuvers, Ethan shouted. The small ship twisted and spun, dodging blasts that came closer and closer. One shot grazed the hull, sending sparks flying. The crew braced for impact. In the chaos, a young weapons officer called out, "Sir, the alien ship is moving to flank us." Ethan made a quick decision. Prepare the ship's pulse cannons. Fire when ready. The cannons charged, humming with power. As the alien ship closed in, Ethan gave the order. Fire! Bright beams shot out, striking the alien ship. For a moment, it staggered, but then it disappeared behind an asteroid field, vanishing from sensors. The Vigilant limped away, damaged but alive. Ethan knew this was just the beginning. The ultimate fleet was broken. Earth was vulnerable. And the enemy was coming. With no time to lose, Ethan sent out a desperate message to the scattered survivors. "We must form a new fleet," he said. "Together we can fight back." Days passed in a blur of battle and planning. Ethan worked tirelessly, coordinating small groups of survivors, sharing what little intelligence he had. He became a symbol of hope. The man once called useless was now the only leader they had. Yet, even as they fought, Ethan never forgot the message hidden in the alien signal. First strike begins in 7 days. The clock was still counting down. And the war for Earth had only just begun. The stars outside the Vigilance windows seemed colder than ever. The blackness of space stretched on forever. A vast silent ocean in which Ethan Cole and his small band of survivors drifted like tiny rafts. The ultimate fleet was broken. The mighty battlecruisers that had once formed Earth's shield were now nothing more than drifting wrecks or burning ruins. The enemy's attack had been swift, brutal, and overwhelming. But now, in the darkest hour, something unexpected was happening. Ethan, once called useless, was becoming the spark of humanity's fight to survive. After the fall of the command ships and the scattering of Earth's fleet, Ethan had taken charge of what remained in his sector. His ship, the ECS Vigilant, was small and lightly armed compared to the giant warships lost in battle. But Ethan knew size and firepower weren't everything. "We can't win by matching them ship for ship," he told his crew. "We need to be smarter, faster, harder to hit." The survivors trusted him because he had the only knowledge of the alien signals and the enemy's movements. They had seen him predict the enemy's next strike once already. Now, they were ready to follow him wherever he led. Ethan studied the data carefully. The alien fleet was powerful, but not invincible. Their ships moved like hunters, striking quickly and then vanishing into the void. But they also avoided deep asteroid fields and thick nebula clouds, places where their sensors were less effective. Ethan had an idea. "We'll use the asteroid belts as cover," he explained. "We'll set traps. We'll draw them in and hit them when they least expect it." The crew was nervous but hopeful. For the first time since the attack began, they saw a chance to fight back. The plan was risky. Ethan divided the survivors into small, fast groups. They would scatter through the asteroid belt near Jupiter, using the massive rocks as shields and hiding spots. When the alien ships arrived, these groups would ambush them from multiple angles. Communication would be limited to avoid detection. Each group had to trust their own skills and Ethan's strategy. The days that followed were tense. Every moment could bring a surprise attack or a sudden loss. Ethan spent hours poring over sensor reports, updating the plan. Remember, he said to his crew, the enemy is strong, but they're not perfect. They can be tricked. One night, deep in the asteroid belt, the first ambush began. Ethan's group was hidden behind a massive rock, the vigilance sensors scanning the dark space ahead. Suddenly, distant shapes appeared, the alien ships moving cautiously through the belt. The small human ships stayed silent, holding their fire. Ethan's heart pounded. This was the moment. As the lead alien ship passed, Ethan gave the order, fire everything. The hidden human ships erupted with laser blasts and missile salvos. The enemy was caught off guard. Several alien ships took hits, their shields flickering under the sudden attack, but the aliens quickly recovered. Their ships spread out, hunting for the hidden human raiders. The asteroid field became a deadly maze of flashing weapons and roaring engines. Ethan's crew worked with precision, dodging rocks and enemy fire. One by one, the small groups picked off alien ships, forcing them to retreat. After the ambush, the survivors regrouped on the Vigilant. Their faces were tired but filled with hope. We did it, said one crew member, barely believing it. Ethan smiled but warned, this is only the beginning. They'll learn from this. True to Ethan's words, the aliens changed tactics. They sent scout ships to map the asteroid fields. They used drones to detect hidden ships. They began attacking supply lines and small colonies, trying to cut off Earth's resources. Ethan and his fleet responded quickly. They protected supply ships, evacuated civilians, and kept fighting small battles. Despite the hardships, the humans learned and adapted. Ethan's leadership inspired his crew and the scattered survivors. He showed that even a small ship with a smart plan could fight back against overwhelming odds. Word spread among the fleet. The useless officer was becoming a legend. One evening, as the Vigilant drifted near a dense nebula, Ethan received a message from a nearby colony. We're under attack, the voice crackled. The aliens are here. We need help. Ethan didn't hesitate. Prepare to jump, he ordered. We're going to help them. The jump through the nebula was dangerous. Sensors were unreliable, and the ship shook violently as it passed through thick clouds of gas and charged particles. But the surprise was on their side. When the aliens appeared near the colony, they were not expecting reinforcements so fast. Ethan's fleet attacked from the shadows of the nebula, striking swiftly. The battle was fierce but short. The aliens were forced to retreat, leaving the colony alive but shaken. Afterward, Ethan addressed his crew. This fight is far from over, he sighed. But every victory matters. Every saved life is a step toward winning. His crew cheered quietly. Their spirits lifted. As the days passed, the countdown from the alien signal still haunted Ethan. First strike begins in 7 days. But the days had passed and no final attack had come. Had the aliens delayed? Or was the message a trick? Ethan didn't know, but he was ready. In the quiet moments between battles, Ethan studied the signal again. He worked with the ship's engineer to improve the Vigilant sensors and communications. They decoded more of the alien message, finding clues about the enemy's technology and weaknesses. Every discovery was a small victory. Despite the danger, the small crew found moments of normal life. They shared stories, repaired their ship, and kept watch together. Ethan sometimes looked at the stars and wondered about the creatures who had sent the warning and why they wanted to destroy humanity. He thought about Earth, safe for now but still threatened. The small victories gave Hope to many. Other scattered fleets heard of Ethan's success and began to rally around him. Messages came from distant ships. We stand with you. We fight beside you. Lead us. Ethan's burden grew heavier, but so did his resolve. The war was far from over, but humanity was no longer hiding. Ethan's small fleet was becoming a thorn in the alien side, and the man once called useless was now the light leading humanity's fight against the dark. The enemy was coming. Ethan Cole stood on the bridge of the ECS Vigilant, staring at the stars beyond the ship's thick viewports. He could feel the tension in the cramped room, every officer waiting, every crew member silent but ready. For weeks, the alien fleet had been slowly moving inward through the solar system, attacking anything in its path. Their ships were powerful and fast. Their weapons were deadly and precise. But now, something worse was coming. The enemy flagship. It was the largest and most dangerous ship in the alien fleet. A black monolith that blocked out the stars wherever it went. A weapon capable of destroying planets. Earth's remaining forces had gathered near Saturn's orbit. The cold, gas giant loomed large outside their windows, a silent giant watching the coming battle. Ethan's plan was bold, desperate, even. They would lure the alien flagship near Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Titan's thick atmosphere was full of methane storms and volatile gases, perfect for a trap. The idea was simple in theory. Set off a chain of nuclear charges buried deep in Titan's ice. Ignite the methane storms, creating a massive explosion. Use the blast to cripple the flagship shields and systems. It was dangerous. If it failed, Earth's last hope would be destroyed. Ethan met with the fleet's remaining captains to explain the plan. Some looked doubtful, others fearful. Sir, Captain Rena from the destroyer Eeks Falcon said, if this fails, we lose everything. Is there no other way? Ethan shook his head. No, this is our only chance. The enemy is too strong to fight head-on. The room was quiet. Finally, Commander Shaw, a veteran pilot, stood up. We trust you, Ethan. We'll follow your orders. The preparations began immediately. Nuclear charges were deployed to Titan's surface by unmanned probes. Ships moved into position around the moon, ready to attack once the explosion happened. Ethan spent hours going over every detail with his crew. They checked weapons, shields, and engines. Every system had to be perfect. The day of the attack arrived. Saturn's golden rings shone faintly in the distance as the alien flagship approached. Titan. Ethan felt the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. Brace for battle, he ordered. Remember, this is for Earth. The flagship entered Titan's orbit, massive and silent. Its black hull reflected the orange haze of the moon's atmosphere. Ethan watched as the charges were activata. Tremor ran through Titan's surface. The methane storms ignited in a fiery explosion that lit up the dark sky. The blast was massive, a wall of fire and gas that surged toward the flagship. For a moment, it seemed the plan had worked. The flagship's shields flickered and failed under the blast. Ethan's ships fired their weapons, striking the enemy with everything they had. But then the flagship recovered. Its systems rebooted faster than expected. Its weapons recharged. The battle turned brutal. The flagship fired back with fury. A beam of energy tore through the fleet, destroying one ship after another. The human fleet was pushed back, losing ground. Ethan's Vigilant took heavy damage. Alarms blared, and the crew worked frantically to keep the ship alive. Damage report, Ethan demanded. Shields at 20%. Engines damaged. We won't last long. Ethan knew the battle was lost unless he took a risk. He ordered the ship to move closer to the flagship. Prepare to board, he said. The crew looked shocked. We're going to storm the flagship. Ethan nodded. Yes, if we can take out their command center, we can stop the attack. Using the ship's damaged engines, the Vigilant closed the distance. Enemy fighters tried to intercept, But Ethan's crew fought fiercely, blasting through the attackers. They docked with the flagship's hull. Ethan led a small team through narrow corridors filled with alien technology. The air was cold, and the silence was heavy. They moved carefully, knowing the enemy could be anywhere. Suddenly, alarm sounded. Alien soldiers appeared, weapons ready. A fierce fight broke out. Ethan's team fought bravely, using their weapons and tactics to push forward. Finally, they reached the command center. Ethan hacked into the control panel. He uploaded a virus designed to shut down the flagship systems. The ship shuddered. Lights flickered. The flagship's weapons powered down. Ethan's team retreated quickly, escaping before the ship exploded. Back on the Vigilant, Ethan watched as the flagship was crippled. The remaining alien ships retreated. Earth had won the battle, but the war was not over. Ethan knew new threats would come. He looked out at the stars, ready to lead humanity's fight for survival. The battle was over. At least for now. The enemy flagship lay crippled, drifting near the edge of Saturn's orbit. The remaining alien ships had fled, leaving humanity battered but alive. Ethan Cole stood on the bridge of the ECS Vigilant, his eyes fixed on the distant stars. He felt a quiet pride mixed with exhaustion. From a junior officer once called useless, he had become Earth's last hope, and its brightest light. News of Ethan's daring raid spread quickly through the scattered human fleets. Messages from distant commanders poured in. "We owe you our lives. You led us when no one else would. Earth is saved because of you." Ethan never expected this, but the victory had come at a cost. The EC's Vigilant was badly damaged and barely held together. Many brave crew members had fallen in battle. The loss weighed heavily on Ethan's heart. He visited each of the wounded and those mourning lost friends. Their pain was raw, but so was their hope. Earth had begun to rebuild. The shattered fleets were regrouping. New ships were being built. New leaders were emerging. Ethan was promoted quickly, from lieutenant to commander, then captain. His name became a symbol of courage and resilience. Yet not everyone was happy. Some fleet officers resented Ethan's rise. They whispered behind his back, saying he was lucky or reckless. They questioned his unconventional tactics and small ship. Ethan ignored the whispers. He knew that leadership was about action, not words. Ethan's next challenge was to unite the surviving fleets and prepare for the inevitable return of the alien enemy. The message in the signal was clear. The first strike was just the beginning. At a meeting with Fleet Command on Earth, Ethan stood before the highest-ranking officers. They listened carefully as he explained his plans to rebuild Earth's defenses and improve communications. "I don't want to wait for the enemy to come again," Ethan said firmly. "We must strike first if we have to. We must be ready." Slowly, his ideas gained support. New training programs were started, focusing on quick thinking, teamwork, and using smarter ships. Ethan worked with engineers to develop new weapons and better sensors. He wanted humanity to be ready for whatever came next. Outside the conference room, civilians cheered when Ethan stepped out. He smiled humbly, remembering the long road from outcast to leader, but Ethan's true test came soon. Intelligence reports showed the alien fleet was rebuilding, stronger, faster, more dangerous. They were gathering far beyond Pluto, preparing for a second attack. Ethan gathered his commanders. "We don't have much time," he warned. "We need to find their base and strike before they can come back." The fleet launched deep into the outer solar system, searching for any sign of the enemy. Days turned into weeks as they hunted in the cold, dark reaches of space. One night, the Vigilant sensors detected a hidden base inside a massive asteroid field. The alien fleet was using it as a staging ground. Ethan ordered an immediate attack. The small human fleet launched a surprise strike, hitting the base hard. Explosions rocked the asteroids, and the alien ships scrambled to defend. The battle was fierce and brutal, but humanity fought with renewed strength and skill. Ethan's leadership inspired the crews to push harder. When the dust settled, the alien base was destroyed. Many enemy ships were lost. The threat was weakened, but not gone. Back on Earth, Ethan was hailed as a hero once again. He was promoted to admiral, given command of the rebuilt Ultimate Fleet. Yet Ethan remained humble. He knew the real victory was in humanity's spirit, its refusal to give up. Years passed. The solar system grew stronger. Earth led the way, uniting colonies and fleets. New technologies blossomed. Ethan often stood looking at the stars, thinking about the future. He knew the war might never truly end, but humanity was ready to face whatever came next. From outcast to legend, Ethan Cole had shown the universe what it meant to be human. Not just strong or brave, but clever, determined, and united. The countdown on the alien signal had long since stopped. The message was clear now. Humanity was no longer alone, and it would not be defeated.